Picture this. It's February 18th, 2001. You're a professional NASCAR driver racing for the checkered flag at Daytona. And then, in a split second, everything changes. One bump, one crash. And suddenly, you're the man who millions of fans blame for killing a legend. This is the story of Sterling Marlin, a two-time Daytona 500 champion who's carried an impossible burden for over 2 decades. At 67 years old, he's finally opening up about the day Dale Earnhardt died. And what he has to say might surprise you. Sterling Marlin wasn't just any driver. Born June 30th, 1957 in Columbia, Tennessee, racing was in his blood. His father, Cuckoo Marlin, raced in NASCAR for 14 years. Sterling made his debut in 1976, filling in for his injured father while still a teenager. He earned Rookie of the Year in 1983, but here's the crazy part. It took him 279 career starts before his first win. That's more than any driver in history at the time. And when that first win finally came, it was at the 1994 Daytona 500, the most prestigious race in NASCAR. Then he won it again in 1995, becoming only the third driver in history to win back-to-back Daytona 500s, joining legends Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough. By 2001, Sterling was a respected veteran with a solid career and a reputation as one of the most consistent drivers on the circuit. Now let's talk about that fateful day. February 18th, 2001, the Daytona 500. Sterling had just joined Chip Ganassi Racing, and 3 days before the big race, he'd actually beaten Dale Earnhardt in the qualifying race. Everything was clicking. As the race wound down to its final laps, the storyline was perfect. Michael Waltrip, who'd never won a Cup Series race in 462 starts, was leading. Right behind him was Dale Earnhardt Jr. in second place, and Dale Earnhardt Sr. was running third, blocking Sterling Marlin and other drivers from passing, protecting both of his team's cars. 5 cars were packed together, fighting for every inch, heading into the final turn of the final lap. And then it happened. Sterling's car made light contact with the back left corner of Earnhardt's famous black number 3 Chevrolet. Just a tap, the kind of contact that happens in every NASCAR race. But this time was different. Earnhardt's car fishtailed, slid toward the infield, then suddenly swung back hard to the right, cutting across traffic. He clipped Ken Schrader's car, and both went flying into the concrete wall at approximately 180 miles per hour. Up front, Michael Waltrip crossed the finish line, finally getting his first victory. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished second, but Dale Earnhardt Sr., the 7-time champion, the Intimidator, one of the greatest drivers who ever lived, was pronounced dead at Halifax Medical Center. The cause was a basilar skull fracture. He was 49 years old, NASCAR's darkest day. Within hours, the blame game started, and all of it landed on Sterling's shoulders. 2 days after the race, Sterling spoke publicly, his voice shaking. He said, "I definitely didn't do anything intentional. We were just racing our guts out for the last lap of the Daytona 500. He'd watched the tape once, just once. That's all he could handle, but the fans weren't listening. They wanted blood." Sterling's website got thousands of angry emails. People wrote death threats on his trailer. His race shop received phone calls threatening not just Sterling, but his entire family, his wife, his kids, death threats over a racing accident. Sterling told ABC News, "Maybe people are frustrated and just looking for somebody to blame. I'd do anything to not be here today, to not address this subject." Can you imagine? He'd just been involved in a crash that could have killed him too, and now he's receiving death threats. NASCAR officially cleared Sterling of any wrongdoing, but the fan anger didn't stop. And then something incredible happened. The following week at Rockingham, Dale Earnhardt Jr. did something that probably saved Sterling's career, and maybe even his life. Dale Jr. publicly absolved Sterling of any responsibility. He told everyone who loved his father to stop assigning blame. Jr. said the vitriol towards Sterling was ridiculous and would not be tolerated. Think about that. Dale Jr. had just lost his father. He was only 26 years old and grieving. And instead of lashing out, he showed incredible grace. He defended Sterling Marlin. Michael Waltrip also came to Sterling's defense. These were Earnhardt's people, and they were all saying the same thing. It was a racing accident. Nobody was to blame. But tragedy doesn't just end. For Sterling Marlin, that moment has defined the rest of his life. In a 2011 interview, 10 years after the crash, Sterling admitted he was still troubled by what happened. Dale Jr. later revealed that Sterling was haunted by the incident, that he'd watched the footage repeatedly, trying to make sense of it all. Sterling went on to have some success after 2001. He won 4 more races over the next 2 years. But in 2002, he was diagnosed with a cracked vertebra in his neck after another crash. His career started its decline. By 2009, he retired from full-time racing. In total, Sterling competed in 748 NASCAR Cup Series races over 33 years, recording 10 wins, 83 top 5 finishes, and 216 top 10 finishes. But despite being named to NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers list in 2023, part of Sterling's legacy will always be tied to that crash. And that's deeply unfair, because NASCAR itself learned from Earnhardt's death. In the 20 years following that tragedy, not a single driver has died during competition in a major NASCAR series race. The sport implemented safer barriers, mandated head and neck restraints, and developed new safety standards. All of these changes have saved lives. Ryan Newman's terrifying crash in the 2020 Daytona 500, he walked away. That doesn't happen without the improvements made after Earnhardt's death. So where is Sterling Marlin today? He's 67 years old now, living on his ranch in Tennessee. He owns his own racing team in the Super Late Model Series, where his grandson Sterling races for him, carrying on the family tradition. In 2012, Sterling revealed he'd been diagnosed with Parkinsonism, a condition similar to Parkinson's disease. He's had surgery as part of his treatment. Throughout it all, Sterling has maintained his dignity. He's never blamed anyone else. He's never made excuses. He's simply lived with the weight of that moment. And when Dale Earnhardt Jr. invited Sterling onto his podcast years later, they talked openly about everything. Jr.'s support never wavered. So what can we learn from Sterling Marlin's story? First, racing is dangerous. What happened on that last lap wasn't about blame. It was about the inherent risks of the sport. Second, grace matters. Dale Earnhardt Jr. could have destroyed Sterling Marlin with a single statement. Instead, he chose compassion. He refused to let anger and grief turn into something ugly. That's true character. Third, we need to be careful about assigning blame when tragedy strikes. Those fans who sent death threats were acting out of pain, but they were wrong. Sterling didn't cause Dale Earnhardt's death. The lack of safety equipment that would have saved Earnhardt's life did, not Sterling Marlin. Sterling Marlin should be remembered as a 2-time Daytona 500 champion, as a driver who persevered through 279 races before his first win, as a man who continued racing even after the worst day of his professional life. He's one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers for a reason. At 67, Sterling Marlin has lived with this burden for over 20 years. He's carried it with dignity, with grace, and with the support of the very people who had every right to blame him but chose not to. Dale Earnhardt's death changed NASCAR forever, making it safer for every driver who's come after. And Sterling Marlin became part of that legacy too. So here's my question for you. Do you think Sterling Marlin has been treated fairly by NASCAR fans? Should his legacy be defined by that one tragic moment or by his entire career? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story powerful, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into sports history. Thanks for watching.